Welcome to another edition of Brugler's Draft Board. Dane, let's take a look at your top 5 cornerbacks. And up top, nothing's really changed since the beginning of the season. Ohio State's Jeff Okudah was a top 10 pick coming into the year. He's still regarded as a top 10 pick. But for someone with as little experience and as little stats as him, why are evaluators so sure on him?
Well, the NFL scouting motto is traits over production. And even coming off the bench as a sophomore last year, 2018, Okudah flashed those top-level athletic traits for a player that size. Came into this past year, plenty of hype, and refreshingly, he lived up to expectations. 6'1", long arms, quiet feet, stays in phase up and down the field regardless of the type of receiver, the type of route runner. And coaches say that it's not just the lower body talent, but his intelligence and what he offers from the neck up. He can play man coverage, zone coverage. He's still developing in some areas, but he owns the necessary physical and mental makeup to be a #1 cornerback in the NFL very early in his career.
Alabama corner Trayvon Diggs is the younger brother of Vikings receiver Stephon Diggs, and he was actually a top wide receiver recruit in Maryland too. So I'd imagine that Trayvon's hands help him out quite a bit on defense, but what other traits carry over to that side of the ball?
Diggs arrived in Tuscaloosa as a two-way player, and his offensive background, no doubt, it benefits him at corner. The athletic traits, that's what teams are just keying in on. Height, the length, which makes him such an intriguing prospect. He has the long speed, he can stay attached to vertical routes, the lower body twitch, which really allows him to spring in any direction. So there's no question the technique is messy, but Alabama, they allowed him just to be an athlete because that's what he did best, and that's what really allowed him to be a big player, a big-time player for the Crimson Tide this season.
Dane, it feels like Florida corner C.J. Henderson is a bit of a riser in the process. Is that because people are catching on to him or because other players are slipping down?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a specific reason. I think it's mostly because there's so much split opinion about the order of these cornerbacks after Okudah. And Henderson, he's an easy player to like because he's a top-tier athlete, great height, great length. He's always been a first-round talent. But that second tier of cornerbacks after Okudah is such a crowded group. And so C.J. Henderson, among some of these other corners, they're kind of nudging their way and trying to figure out exactly where they fit.
Unfortunately, Christian Fulton left a bit of a sour taste in evaluators' mouths with a subpar performance in the national title game. So how much does that one game affect his stock?
Well, you don't overreact to one game, but at the same time, you don't ignore it either, especially at on that stage, the national title game, and against the caliber of receivers that Clemson's throwing out there with T. Higgins and Justin Ross and the other high-level receivers they have on that roster. So, bottom line, his evaluation is going to be based on the body of work, and that's what he put on tape the last 2 seasons, not just that last game.
Dane, it's not often that we talk about a borderline first-round pick being a cornerback from the Big 12, but that's the case with TCU's Jeff Gladney. But knowing that Big 12 offenses love to air it out, how do you evaluate his tape?
I think that's a valid concern. But at the same time, it's also why I really appreciate Gladney's game. Yes, he plays in a pass-happy conference, which means we have plenty of opportunities to evaluate him against different types of receivers. On his tape versus Baylor, Gladney shadowed Denzel Mims up and down the field. It was a fun battle, wins on both sides, but Gladney more than held his own against a receiver that probably ends up going on day 2 of the draft. He has NFL speed, NFL toughness, and I've often used the term junkyard dog to describe his play personality because that's how he competes. That's the mindset that NFL teams want to see in a corner, and he brings that. So if he can improve his route anticipation, play with a little more subtlety with his physical nature, I think Gladney's going to be a 10-year pro at the next level.
So I think it's safe to say right now that it's not likely Okudah falls to the Jets at 11. So for the rest of your top 5 corners, are we talking about potential first-round guys or more so day 2 guys?
Well, Okudah might be the only corner that we see in the top half of round 1. But cornerback, we know, one of the most important positions on the roster. So it's possible we could see maybe a C.J. Henderson get in the top 15. But it's probably more likely that that cornerback run after Okudah, it doesn't start until the back half of round 1 into round 2. That next tier is a crowded group. Diggs, Henderson, Fulton, Gladney. That's my top 5 going into the combine. But several scouts really like Utah's Jalen Johnson, Clemson's A.J. Terrell. We've talked about Damon Arnett before from Ohio State. He can be in that top 40 mix if some of the character questions seem to check out for him. So this should be a very corner-heavy draft, late first and then into the second round.
There you have it, the top 5 cornerbacks. Thanks a lot, Dane. We'll see you next week.